Casting directors can smell desperation from a mile away, and cultivating a daily practice of having that mindset of abundance was her number one tip for all actors.
Alison, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me, guys.
Oh, so excited to have you.
So I'm Alison Hazelden. I wear a lot of hats. I'm an actor, I'm a marketing consultant, I am the host of a podcast, I am an online educator, I'm a yogi.
Yes.
Those are all my titles that I currently have at the moment.
Boss babe.
You know, we do all the things.
Yep.
And it's a lot to juggle, but it is fun. It is much more fun than I've had ever in my life doing all those things. So.
Yeah, you are so amazing at marketing, which is why I wanted to bring you on the podcast. But before we dive into that, can you tell us like a little bit about your podcast and how I really ultimately want to know how you ended up marrying like your passion for acting with your passion for marketing and how you were able to turn that into a business and support yourself.
I have a podcast. I'll start with that. I have a podcast called It's a Slate of Mind. And it is a podcast for actors and really anyone in the entertainment industry, but we do kind of target it towards actors. And we talk about the mental, emotional, and social aspects of the business that we all experience and think about and feel, but maybe don't feel comfortable talking about openly. And the idea kind of started because I grew up in the industry and there just were certain things that no one talked about, whether it was an ego thing or people were embarrassed about it or they just didn't know who to ask about how to do those kinds of things. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to make this for my younger self and kind of also track like things that I'm learning because I learn something every time I have a guest on. So that's my podcast. If you want to tune in, you can find it on 11 different platforms, wherever you listen to podcasts. And we are in the middle of season 3 right now. When this comes out, we'll probably be in season 4. But yeah, I love it. I love doing it. We have local guests in Atlanta, as well as New York, LA, pretty much anywhere there's actors. So that's my podcast. And
how did you come up with the name It's a Slate of Mind? Because that is brilliant.
It is. I can't take any credit for it. Michael, my partner, came up with it. We were kind of he's really good at those like catchy, hooky, punny things. So we've been tossing a few ideas around and he just kept coming back to that one and I loved it. So
it's brilliant.
It's so smart.
Tell me a little bit. I mean, I know your story because we've talked about this before, but somebody who's listening may not know. Yeah. How did you get into acting and when did you get into acting?
Yeah, so I like to say that acting kind of happened to me instead of the other way around. I was definitely one of those kids who was like acting out at all the little like movie musicals that I would watch as like a baby. Drive my parents crazy. Like I couldn't go any moving vehicle unless my parents were like acting out a play for me or like playing music that they would sing along to. I would scream bloody murder. Like I needed to be entertained.
Oh my God.
Kidding.
Bless my parents. And then I'm from Orlando, Florida. So at that time when I was growing up, we kind of were peaking for like all the boy bands and like Britney Spears and all of them were based in Florida and Disney was really doing a lot at the time. So I started out my first time on a set, I was 6 on a little TV show called Animal Jam. Jim Henson did that show. I don't know if anyone remembers that, but I did it like 4 or 5 episodes of that. And then I got like a commercial agent and did stuff like that. And then I kind of just kept adding on. And then by the time I was 12, I was working pretty steadily, professionally in theater and film, TV, print, all of that fun stuff. So at that point I was homeschooled. And then by the time I was 14, I was also doing commercial music. So I was still living in Orlando, but I was fully homeschooled at that point, and I had an acting manager and my music manager in LA. So I would kind of bounce back and forth between LA and Orlando and then Nashville, because I started writing. So I was writing for other artists in Nashville in high school. And then I was interning with some folks from the Grammy Awards there. So I would kind of bounce between the three cities. And that was like my childhood.
Wow.
And I loved it. I really did. It was everything I wanted to do, but I kind of got to the point in my later teen years where it was a lot, and it was a lot of pressure and a lot of people wanting to make money off of me. So
Wow.
I
Okay.
ended up taking a break and quitting everything when I was 18.
Wow.
So that's the background.
Wow. So, what was that like when you made that decision? Because at that point, it's almost like part of your identity.
Yeah. Did you feel pressure from your parents or your peers or your agent or anybody pushing you like to keep doing it? Like, how did you make that decision?
Yeah. So that was definitely, I mean, it sounds so silly now, especially being so far away from it. But I mean, that was my whole life. Like most of my friends were adults. Like I didn't go to middle school. I didn't really have like a normal high school experience. So that was my life. Like I was working all the time. And I'm really lucky in that I never had like parents who were the stereotypical manager parents. My parents very much let me kind of take the lead on everything, and they of course like facilitated everything and were really helpful. But they never pressured me to do things I didn't want to do, which is great. But you know, they had invested a lot of time and money, and it's like they definitely were like, okay, like, are you sure about this? And my managers were in the same boat, like, are you really sure about this? But at the same time, I think everyone knew, and I really knew, that I was at the point where I was 17, 18. So the roles I was getting were a lot more complex. We're getting a lot more emotionally in depth. And at that point, like I hadn't had a lot of real life experiences because I hadn't even been around kids my own age that much.
Wow.
So I knew that like my emotional toolbox was just not where it needed to be. I didn't really know who I was. I felt like, I kind of lost sight of my why. And so I kind of knew deep down inside that like I needed to step away and get some life experience before I wanted to move forward. I think especially at that point, I was really deep in music. And for people who don't know much about music, when you're working for like a commercial route, you're going to be positioned a certain way. So I was kind of being positioned in a genre that I liked, but it wasn't something that was like me, I guess. So that combined with like me not being able to connect to the roles I was getting, I was like, okay, this isn't working. So it was definitely really emotional. It was really emotional for me because that was so much of my identity. But I'll tell anyone who asks, like, it was the best thing that I took time off. So I took like 5 years off.
Wow.
Completely. No auditions, nothing.
Yeah, I still, my like day job in high school and college was at Disney World. So I still worked there and I was performing there, but you know, it was just like a career thing. But yeah, no, cold turkey. Like I did nothing. I cut off everything. I was like, I'm done. I decided to go finish my degree. I started a whole separate career in business and marketing. And I thought that's what I was going to be doing. And so like, I never thought I was coming back.
So what was like the vision you had for your business and marketing life? Like,
yeah. So like I graduated from college. I took an agency job right out of college. And then I was literally planning, my dad lives in New York City, and I was planning to move up there with him and switch to a bigger agency there. And that's what I was going to do. Like, I was like, yeah, like I'll work in marketing and I'll be great at it and be a business lady and
wow.
and do whatever. But I was really creatively dead at work, and very organically I just started to like be at my desk and start scribbling like creative ideas for random things, or like little visions of like a short film or like a song. And it would like, I was so pissed at myself, guys. Like I was like, no, that side of me is dead. Like, we're not doing this again. Yeah, working in advertising, marketing, and just like scribbling down all these ideas. And I was like, okay, so something's got to change.
Wow. Okay. And then, so what was it like when you made the switch, like back into acting? Was it like, I can do both of these things, or like, did you later discover that, or what was that like?
Yeah, I consider myself really lucky the way everything kind of played out for me, because I, at that point, had a few years of experience under my belt in marketing. So it was fairly easy for me to get a job with a remote agency. So when I moved to Atlanta from Florida, I was fully remote, full-time in a marketing position. I still hadn't decided I was coming back full-time. I knew I didn't want to be in the office anymore. And I needed to do something creative, but I didn't know what. So I moved to a online position. And then at the time I had started dating Michael, who is my partner, and he is a lot newer to the industry, but he is an actor as well. And he was like, look, like, I really want to move to Atlanta and I'm going to do the acting thing. And like, I had never worked in Atlanta growing up. Like I had some friends who would come up or come down for like Vampire Diaries and stuff, but like all my management was in LA, and they're like, no. Like back then, like Atlanta wasn't anything. But I knew that a lot of people were moving down and it was like booming. So, and I knew I was not going to move back to LA because the vibe doesn't really suit me.
I love LA. I'm like, I would be there in a second, but I could never live in New York.
Yeah.
You said you would live in New York. Like I could never.
Yeah. So, I mean, I grew up being in New York a lot because of my dad. So I just also I don't like attention. And I feel like in New York, no one really cares what you do. Like no one's looking at you. And in LA growing up, I was like, everyone's looking at me all the time. I hate it.
Wow.
Yeah. So I can like blend in New York, but my options were Atlanta, where Michael was moving, or New York. And then I talked to like a lot of my friends from both and decided to go to Atlanta to kind of rebuild. I figured for me, transitioning from my only experience being as a child actor to kind of having to totally rebuild everything from scratch as an adult, Atlanta was kind of the best option. And I'm so glad I moved here because people are really nice and there's so many opportunities. And I don't have to eat ramen.
Tell us a little bit of the struggle of being an artist and being an entrepreneur. Like, what was a time where you felt like you didn't have it together?
When I quit, that was like, to this day, like one of the lowest lows. I think for me, I was really lucky because my whole first year here, I was mostly just focusing on getting my acting side together because I had a full-time marketing position. So at that point, and that was before I started the podcast, that's before I started Beyond Acting with Alex Collins. So I was really just focused on rebuilding. And I mean, I definitely underestimated how difficult it would be to rebuild. It took me a year to get an agent, which even with like a lot of people sending me in and putting their name on me, they just didn't need someone who looked like me, or they already had a roster full of girls who look like me. So that was definitely a challenge because I had to, I moved down and was like, oh yeah, like I'm going to like start auditioning and just do my thing again. And that didn't happen. So, I mean, in some ways I'm really grateful for it because that is definitely what that extra time I had inspired the creation of It's a Slate of Mind. And it allowed me to kind of focus on networking. But it was tough. I mean, even though I knew logically, like, okay, it's just like a numbers thing and they're all filled up with the amount of people that they need in your typecast, like, not even being able to put your hat in the ring for something that you moved here to do.
Right.
That was definitely a challenge.
How was that for your ego?
It was like, I remember now looking back on it, I would go like 2 months and I'd be like, this is great. Like I'm doing whatever I want and like getting creative and like doing my own thing. And then like out of nowhere, you'd have a night where you're like, oh my gosh, this is the worst. Like I should just, I should have, like all my friends in LA were like, we told you should have come back here and gotten in with like your old agents. And, things like that would just like hit you all at once. Kind of not unlike how it is living through a pandemic, where it's just like that roller coaster of up and downs. But
Right.
I think definitely for me, having my own creative projects that I had complete control and ownership over was so vital at that point to channel the energy that I felt like I wasn't able to put into my acting career into something else that was still creative. So,
And just the fact that you were creating probably created that energy of like, everything is fine. Like, I'm good. I don't need anything. And then did you end up signing with an agent? Like, what did that look like?
yeah, so it was kind of an interesting road. I signed with an agent commercially, literally shout out to Jason McDonald and Catherine Dyer, because they worked their booties off and like invited everyone to come see me anytime I did like a stage reading or like a performance at Drama Inc. And eventually I signed commercially with an agent. And then I booked a SAG film on my own. And then I still didn't get signed theatrically after that. And the day that I booked that film, Jason and Kat sent out a message to a bunch of agents like, hey, free money. Like, if you sign her right now, you'll get commission on this, even though she found it on her own. And then no one still signed me. I shot the first half of that movie, and then I finally connected. Well, actually, an agent found me on Instagram and reached out.
Let's go.
And wanted me to meet with her, and now I'm with her, Laura Magner at Ursula Weidman Talent.
Are you allowed to talk about the movie?
Yeah. I mean, I can say some things.
Okay, it's The Collected, right?
Yes.
I literally auditioned for that movie for Greer. And I think you told me they ended up just completely doing away with that character or whatever.
Yeah. So I had auditioned. That's like, I had auditioned for a different part than I ended up getting. And the part I auditioned for I don't believe is in the movie at all. So I know that they had revised a lot of the story. But yeah, this was a crazy story. So another instance where Instagram I was invited to audition through Instagram.
Are you like, is this professional? Is this legit? Like,
That
what was
sounds
going through your
sketchy.
head? Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, I just did my research. It was Chad Darnell, who I'm like friends with now. And I just like figured out who he was. And I was like, okay, like people I know him. So he's not creepy. And then like I knew that I'd seen something posted for The Collected on Actors Access. So I was like, okay, like this is legit. But I auditioned for some other role. And then like a month and a half passed, didn't hear anything, which is normal for us, didn't think anything of it. And then one Monday afternoon, I'm just at my house doing my normal work, and Chad calls me and says, hey, what are you doing right now? And how quickly can you get here? And I was like, why? Like, I can come, but like, what's going on? He's like, so we had to make a last minute change in our cast for The Collected. And you had been my pick for this role originally. They had chosen someone else. She's not working out. We want you to come and read on set in a trailer for the directors and the writers and see if you're a good fit. And if they like you, then you'll start today. I was like very thankful for my training at that point, because I kind of just like snapped into gear, and I was like, I didn't even know I just assumed it was the role I'd auditioned for originally. Right. So I had no idea it was something else. So I drove to set, was like shaking the whole time I was driving. I also hate driving. So in general, me going on the highway is like a big deal.
It's funny.
So I get to set, and I auditioned in the trailer, and Marcus and Patrick liked it, and they're like, okay, go to hair and makeup. So yeah, and it ended up being a much bigger role than I had auditioned for. And like, I didn't even know that. I was just like, okay, like I assumed it was like a one day, just random thing. And it ended up being a role. So yeah, we're not done filming yet. So we did the Atlanta half, and then I actually have to finish up in LA. And then I kind of got disrupted by the pandemic, but at some point it'll be done. It was supposed to be released in this coming fall, but I have a feeling that might change.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's a crazy story. Michael likes to joke that the rules don't apply to me because like nothing happens in the order that it should.
I literally have an affirmation, Alison, that is, I am the exception to every rule.
It's so easy to think that we only need to show up when people are looking at us or when we know people are looking at us. But one of the things that Chad said to me afterwards, because I had never met him in person, Chad cast me in the Collected 3. And he was like, I knew who you were. Like, I'd seen you around. I knew that you always showed up to support other people. I loved the stuff that you're putting out on social media. I knew that you were a really hard worker and really experienced and really talented. And so I felt comfortable putting my name out on the line for you because I had noticed you. And I didn't know, but I think it's something that we can so easily forget is like, you should be showing up and like doing your best and like really putting yourself out there, whether you think someone impressive or important is watching you or not, because that training is going to give you the tools. So when something is dropped in your lap randomly, you are actually able to follow through and be really proud of how you handle that situation.
So you got an agent and a role from social media. What is your opinion for other actors? Should they be marketing themselves or should they be solely relying on their agent to book them and stuff?
Yeah. So this is a big thing that, you know, back in the day, your reps were a lot more involved with your branding and your marketing. And that's just not how it is anymore. Back when I was a kid, you know, agents would have a much smaller roster and self-tapes weren't a thing. So the whole digital world wasn't a thing. So they had a little bit more time and ability to focus on the few talent that they have. That's just not how it is anymore. Rosters are a lot bigger. Agents are a lot busier. There's a lot more projects even coming out every year. So their job is literally just to submit you for the role and negotiate your contracts, and that's it. Anyone who expects an agent to do more than that either has a really unique relationship with their agent or is just gonna be disappointed. I think it's vital for actors to market themselves and brand themselves actively and consistently. And I think it's important that actors take the time to learn what that really means, because I think there's a lot of people who go about it almost in like a car salesman way, and that's not really what marketing looks like for us.
Right. When you say marketing as actors, do you mean that we should be posting our headshots every day? Or do you think that we should be like maybe finding ways that we love life outside of acting? For instance, Brian Beagle, a lot of times in his auditions, he'll record and your audition is just tell me about yourself, right? And actors, a nervous actor will be, I'm an actor, I'm amazing, I'm from New York, and I love Atlanta. You know what I mean? Whereas, yeah, so like, what do you think about like marketing yourself and like getting to know yourself outside of being an actor, but showing up professionally online with the intention of connecting with other people in the industry versus like maybe wasting social media or being too much actory? Like, what do you think?
Yeah, so I mean, point blank, the fact that you're an actor is not the most interesting thing about you. There's a million actors out there. There's a million singers out there. There's a million models out there. Cool. That's just like your job. Like an accountant is going to be like, I'm an accountant and that's the most special thing about me. You know, like, no. Like, that's great that you're an actor and that you like to do it. But like, if that's the most interesting thing, that you really think that's the most interesting thing about you, then like you need to do some soul searching, sister, because it's not. It's just not. And I think, you know, the biggest mistake that actors make is not understanding who their audience is and what their audience actually wants. Most people don't really care about watching your audition blooper reel or looking at your new headshots every day. Like if you want to post something like that every once in a while, or something that's like really cool and unique, and you're going to share a story about it, that's actually going to connect with them beyond just, oh, great, she's like posting more pictures of her face, then like, great, do that every once in a while. But if that's all you're posting, like, what is that actually giving your audience? Why does that connect them to you? Why does that make them feel like they want to be part of you and your story? It doesn't. So I think it's really important to understand who your audience actually is. A lot of actors will just zero in towards their existing friend groups, their existing actors from their acting class. But most of us aren't, you know, in a place right now where we're producing massive projects that we can help out our friends with. So you're kind of wasting your time if you're only creating content for the people you already know. Like you want to present an image that's going to make an executive of a studio want to know more about you, right? You doesn't really matter if your buddy who already knows and loves you is like, oh, this content's amazing. Like it's great that they like it, but that shouldn't be your goal.
Right. Right. So what are some tips or what are some struggles? Like what would you say are the main struggles that actors have with marketing themselves? And then what are some tips that you could give to kind of overcome those struggles?
Yeah. So knowing your audience, number one, like that's a massive issue that I see. And then that kind of leads into strategy and organization. Actors are, and just artists of all kinds, are driven by creativity and emotion and feeling and all of those beautiful things that help us tell stories and create. And it's wonderful for creating. It's not great for business, because those same kind of go with the flow mentalities that can produce some awesome content might also get you off track and not understanding when things need to be posted and keeping track of all the details. So I find that actors who struggle with organization and don't have systems in place to create a marketing plan that's going to work for them tend to struggle more and feel stressed out by marketing, which then leads them to just like throw their hands up and be like, okay, this isn't for me. I'm just not going to do it. It's fine. But I would say, you know, I have a course coming out actually soon, an online course. It's an 8-week program called Marketing for the Creative 101. And I have a bunch of tools that I just like give you in that for organization. But one of the biggest things that I talk about is having a content library, having all of your stuff batch worked in advance. And it sounds really overwhelming, but I'm at the point now where all of my stuff is 2 months in advance. And I say all the time on my podcast, I have an entire season done before I release any of it, because I know that I want to keep it fun. And I want to make sure that the message that I'm putting out is really authentic to me. So obviously there's things that pop up like in the moment and I'll throw that in. But I want to make sure that I feel really confident when I'm putting out there and that I'm never stressed about it and putting out something that I'll later look back on and like want to delete or feel weird about. So I would suggest, you know, obviously like don't dive in and be like, I need to create like 2 months of content right now. But just start with like 1 week in advance or 2 weeks in advance.
Yeah.
And really take the time to go through those steps and think about, you know, is this something that my audience is going to connect to? Does it uniquely say my brand? Like, does this say Alison?
Mm-hmm.
And then how can I use this to get me closer to what my goals are long-term? So I always go through those 3 questions before I release any kind of content, whether it's a podcast episode, whether it's a social media post, whether it's a blog post. All of those things need to serve your audience, have your unique brand voice on it, and actually get you closer to your goals. So make a spreadsheet, make a Google Doc, like keep track of that information, take time to brainstorm in advance, and just like have all the elements there and ready to go so you can review them before you send them. Like if you're ever on your phone, like typing everything out right there and you're going to send it, I hope that you had someone else read it before you just hit send, because we can so easily just like release things without thinking it through.
And you only get so many chances to get someone's eyeballs, you know? So.
Right. So yeah, I would just say, take more time in advance, plan, like actually write it out on whatever way you best like to organize yourself. I have a full marketing spreadsheet, batch working planner. So anyone who's in my course will get that I use.
Great.
But there's, no bad way to do it. It's just what works for you. So I suggest definitely just being more intentional about it and thinking about how it's going to circle back around to your goals.
Yeah. And just probably knowing who you are and making sure that everything you're putting out is a reflection of who you are authentically.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so many people want to portray an image of themselves that maybe like they want to be or they're working towards becoming, instead of who they actually are. So yeah, I would totally agree with that. Make sure it's you.
Alison, where can our listeners find you?
Oh my goodness. So you can find me personally on Instagram at Alison, ALISON _Hazelden, HASELDEN. I also have a public page on Facebook, Alison Hazelden. And then if you want to get connected with the podcast, it's Slate of Mind. I'm on Instagram at It's a Slate of Mind. All the podcast listening platforms that you could dream of. And then if you want to learn more about the course, which will be coming out soon, you can check out Beyond Acting, and we are on Facebook and Instagram.
Thank you so much for sharing all of these tips. And then just one more thing, just to finish off, actually two more things. I want to know, what is the most valuable piece of advice you've heard on your podcast, since you've had so many people on your podcast? And then the second thing is, I want to know, what does hustle and flow mean to you?
Okay, the best piece of advice. Oh, that's so hard. I've had so many super inspiring guests on the show. I'd say, I had former casting director Donna Bowling on recently, and she is so awesome. She's now a business coach, but she was talking a lot about, and this is something, I think all actors can benefit from, and I know you guys are totally on board with this idea too, but casting directors can smell desperation from a mile away, and cultivating a daily practice of having that mindset of abundance was her number one tip for all actors. Creating a positive, confident, pronoic, which means that the universe is working for you kind of mentality, is her number one tip. And it kind of just inspired me to double down on always taking care of the mental and emotional part of my creative actor self, before worrying about anything else.
I love that, Alison.
Yeah, check out Donna. She's awesome.
I'm definitely going to listen to that episode. And what does hustle and flow mean to you?
Hustle and flow. I love the title of your guys' show. So I actually work in reverse. I flow and then I hustle.
Interesting.
It's not as catchy, but I am all about setting your mind up first. So getting into a flow state, and then being really specific and taking direct actions to create the life that you love.
Love it.
Yes.
You're such a rock star.
Thank you guys so much. This was so much fun.
Yes. And you guys go listen to my episode on It's a Slate of Mind.
Yes.
What season was that?
You were our first episode of season 2. So you were episode 16, I believe, or 17.
Yes. Go check it out. Okay, great. Well, we'll make sure to keep in touch with you, and we wish you the best of luck with your course. And we'll be sure to be sharing all of that with our listeners to keep you guys up to date. And until next time, hustle and flow.
Yay. Thanks, guys.